Hi everyone, Sariana van As here with another art journaling tutorial for Stencil-Art. All products used in this video will be listed at the end of the video and are available at www.stencilart.co.za. I'm working in my Strathmore visual journal with Bristol smooth paper, and as always protect the rest of my journal by placing a sheet of wax paper behind the page I will be working on. Randomly add color to your page with the distress markers and the distress marker spritzer. It worked best for me when I placed the brush nib of the markers just over the edge of the spritzer tool. Remember, the ink will flow from the spritzer and not the marker. As the ink and the distress markers are water soluble, I seal it with Liquitex matte medium. I prefer to use a brayer to lightly apply the matte medium. A brush will move and blend the color too much. Make an absorbent ground by mixing 3 parts of Liquitex white gesso with 1 part Liquitex modeling paste and apply as smooth and thinly as possible with a palette knife. Make sure that the absorbent ground is completely dry and then lightly sand it to get rid of the uneven and rough patches. This will also help to preserve the brush nib of your marker. Use the Vases 3 stencil and draw 5 vases on the background with the fine nib of the distress marker. I started drawing the vases with the same color but changed my mind and erased it with a damp cloth. Apply color directly with the distress markers to the flower and the stem stamps from the Flower Garden stamp set by Holtz and stamp quickly before the ink dries. If this happens, just spritz it lightly with water to activate the ink. If you would like to change the placement or the colors you stamped, just erase it with a damp cloth. Start adding color to the images by dragging the outlined colors into the images with a water brush. Add more ink as necessary. Try not to layer different colors over wet ink, as it is water-based and will always reactivate when liquid is added to it. Also be careful not to use too much water to blend, as water will make the ink run all over the page. Decide from which direction your light source is coming from. This will determine your shading and highlights. This is especially important as light reflects from shiny surfaces, in this instance the glass vases. I've decided that my light source is from the right, therefore my vases will be darker on the left side. I create darker areas by coloring directly with a marker and blending it with my water brush, and then picking up ink from an acrylic block with a water brush for the lighter areas. Wipe the water brush on a dry paper towel to clean it when using different colors. Use a dry paintbrush to blend out a color without adding water. This will only soften the color and not lighten it, as when adding water. Sometimes it's also easier to lay down a different color by picking up the ink from an acrylic block with a dry brush. Use the markers directly for a bold, dark stroke of color. I wanted to lengthen the one flower stem, So first I removed some of the color with a damp foam brush and then just drew right over that spot. Add the waterline to the vases. The stems of the flowers will be distorted and enlarged by the water, and the vases will look darker where it is filled with water. Also add some of the color of the vase over the stem to create the effect that the stem is inside the vase. Add reflections of light shining through the vases and casting shadows behind it. These shadows will be colored as the vases are transparent. Start adding color to the flowers by dragging the ink lines from the stamp with the water brush. Be careful not to drag the water brush over the lines, otherwise it will turn into one ink blot. You need to keep the detail of each leaf of the flower. Create depth by making sure that the flower stems are correctly placed, in front and behind certain areas of the vase. Keep on adding layers of colors to the flowers and try not to add more color over wet areas, as this will just blend the colors without creating depth. It is easier to move around the page and work on dry areas only. Keep on adding color to the vases to create dimension and depth, and use the picket fence distress marker to add highlights. This marker goes on clear and dries opaque. Use a light wash of frayed burlap to create shadows on the left side of the flowers and stems. If you add too much color, add water and blot it with a dry paper towel. I changed over to a paintbrush as the water brush was dispensing too much water and was starting to bleed into my images. I just picked up some water that I spritzed on my acrylic block to blend the frayed burlap to create subtle shading. Write your quote directly on the page with black soot and hickory smoke. And remember, if you make a mistake, you can simply wipe it off and start again. Use the fine or brush nib depending on the size of your letters. Use picket fence to add highlights to the letters. Use the fine nib to add final details to the flowers. Lastly, remember to add the date. Thank you so much for joining me.